Blackballed.
What is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. Friend of the show is returning today. He remains one of the most controversial politicians in Canada, although he would say that is a silly moniker, I think, because all he's trying to do is do politics differently and protect your freedom and liberties. And his name, the leader of the People's Party of Canada, his name is Maxime Bernier. Mr. Bernier, how are you, buddy?
Great. Thank you, James, with you today.
Thank you for coming. Listen, we always start off with, we always have fun conversations here, and I don't want to ruin that at all. But I am going to just start off a little bit differently than I'm normally used to. So there's a guy named Tom Quiggin who was in a I can't remember what publication the article was in. I think it was a Saskatoon newspaper, a Saskatchewan newspaper, where he said the following. Our own government, as demonstrated by the convoy, is perfectly willing to entertain the most horrific violations of civil rights in order to maintain their version of the dialogue. Quiggin said that V4F, Veterans for Freedom, looked into the group's plans for September 11th. He said the group talked about surrounding buildings, wearing uniforms, and requisitioning a courtroom, which means taking one by force. Quiggin said people would be brought to trial and, if found guilty, executed. Videos on social media do show group members stating this course of action for the September 11th protests. You're talking about extrajudicial court, which is going to force people into a room, give them a kangaroo trial, and kill them, said Quiggin, adding that if a violent incident is created, that the government's rationale and reason they need to go after anybody who has ever expressed opposition to the government. Now, the reason why I brought this up is because then I saw that you tweeted the following: Black ops and false flags organized by the government and its goons do happen. All are the Liberals planning one? Now, you've been in government. I mean, how realistic do you think it is that the government of the day right now, the Trudeau government, is planning some sort of false flag operation that would injure people in order to curtail rights even more? What are the odds, you think, on that actually happening?
Well, first, before answering the question, I must go back in time. And as a convoy, the media, the Liberal government were saying that that was dangerous because they had arms and foreign arms, like some a lot of fake story in the mainstream media to discredit us during the Freedom Convoy. That was the only goal of the government, to discredit the people who were there during that convoy, to have all the Emergencies Act. So my answer to that is they did that before. I agree with that manifestation in front of a police office or across the country. Do that because the executive must be independent from the police. And so if you don't like policies coming from the federal government, you must protect against politicians. So that being said, it can happen that a person would be there just to cause trouble and to discredit manifestation, that protest. And so it happened also during the convoys. As you remember, we had only one guy with a Nazi flyer that he was alone. And I remember that person was trying to be interviewed on TV. So that was a little bit bizarre because racist. But Trudeau used that to paint us as and racist. And maybe the same thing can happen in another manifestation. The Trudeau government may have a chance that they or the police, or I don't know, but
So
answering your question, that happened for me are very low.
Okay. Now, I'm old enough to remember. So were you a cabinet minister in 2010? Hold on. I'm just. Sorry. Can you say that again? I didn't hear any of that because I think it was my phone interfering.
I was a cabinet minister in 2010.
Okay. Now, I was at the G20 protest in Toronto. Okay. There was no emergency act called by the Harper government at the time, but I was there and it was crazy. They had built barricades around the city. The RCMP was working in conjunction, I believe, with the FBI and with local police forces and CSIS and everything. That felt more like a curtailing of my rights than the well, I don't know how long the Emergency Act was called for. Was it 8 days or something like that? Whatever it was. Does the Emergency Act necessarily mean your liberties are gone? Or do we have the kind of setup in government right now, as we saw in 2010, where you can dance around the Emergencies Act and probably curtail people's rights even more so than the Emergencies Act itself could?
They use the Emergencies Act to be sure to be able to froze. So they did it, and so that's if you cannot have your own money and you cannot, I think, a big violation of your rights. They didn't do that during the 20 protests that you just told me. So that's why I believe that they invoke the Emergencies Act, and they did it, and they used it. That's the remember during that time, all around the world, I did an interview in France, in Germany, with the mainstream media over there, and they were saying to me, country, your government is acting like a banana republic, freezing a country, and that's why that was a huge, irresponsible violation of our rights.
As someone who was in cabinet, though, isn't it possible that there are certain elements of the story behind the Emergencies Act, behind the convoy, that maybe we don't know about? Maybe that there are some national security interests or national security issues that might be that the government might be keeping a lid on as they prosecute Tamara Litch and they prosecute Pat King and people like that? Or do you think the entire thing is a sham? I'm just, and I'm not trying to like pigeonhole you. Someone brought that up to me. A security expert recently brought this up to me, and he said there might be a whole bunch of stuff that we don't know about yet. And maybe the public inquiry that automatically happens with a declaration of the Emergencies Act will unearth all of these things that we want answers to now. Is that a possibility, or do you think that would have already leaked? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's why we need an inquiry on that, so we'll know more details. And I believe that we don't know everything about the Trudeau government involved the Emergencies Act. So learn more. That's why we need to have that inquiry. And
But when the when the Emergencies Act is declared, a public inquiry is automatically going to follow. Isn't that how the rules work?
So,
whenever Prime Minister declares the Emergencies Act as active, a public inquiry is automatically something that they are going to have to follow through with. Isn't that the way the rules work?
Yeah, it's in the legislation. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Just want also, James, to let you know, I told you that in 2010 I was minister. No, not minister, a little bit later. So okay. At that time in 2010, the mistake, I was not a
no problem. And just to let the audience know, we know that we're having a small issue with the audio. You might be missing a syllable here and there out of Max's sentences. Hopefully that improves, but if it doesn't, we're just going to have to deal with that. Okay, so I also want to let you know, guys, that Max is going to be at the Worldwide Freedom Rally in Canada in Toronto, Canada, Toronto. Not sure why it's like that, but either way, hashtag always free, September 17th, 2022. What is the mission of you speaking at these rallies? One of them has to be to drum up support for your party. But now that most of the mandates are gone, what is the main message that you're trying to deliver at these rallies?
But mandates that are enforced in our country. Look, I cannot travel, and I know that it's coming from a U.S. decision from the U.S. government. As you know, my right to travel across the country by plane or as an unvaccinated Canadian it's not sure right now. But Trudeau suspended that, and maybe that can come back. So we freedoms for granted anymore in this country. And actually, I will speak about that, and I will draconian measures can come back this fall or next week. Said, I hope that we won't have these draconian measures. So for me right now, I'm able to travel across the country as a Canadian, but I hope that I will have that right back suspended. So there are still some measures out there, and I'm not so. I think that they may find back these draconian measures. So that's why I'm there. We cannot take off in this country anymore.
Okay. I want to move on a little bit to the leadership race that's happening right now in your old party. And the reason why is because and this was true the last time I interviewed you, which I think was in May. It was just sort of getting started, where Pierre Poiliev seems to be channeling Max Bernier. A lot of his key messages, it seems like he's really trying his best to go after the convoy crowd and the people who are upset with Justin Trudeau and the mandates. And I am wondering, he's an old colleague of yours. Do you see it as him sort of moving to the right, and is it authentic, what he's doing?
No, it is not authentic. Pierre Poiliev is an opportunist politician speaking about freedoms because Canadians and freedom fighters are for him. When we needed him in March 2020, he's seen, and the opposition also in Ottawa, they were silent and popular to speak for our freedoms. Remember at that time, fear was very efficient, and so what happened is, 65% the population at that time agreed with these draconian measures. So if you're a politician and you want to be in government, you want to have the support of that majority. And so that's why Poiliev and actually almost every across the country didn't speak against the draconian measures. But we did it, and that's why I said that we are doing politics different that time, and now. And we did openly with passion and conviction about our freedoms and fight with freedom fighters, with the freedom convoy. And today it is more popular. So that's why Poiliev is speaking about freedom now. It is not authentic. And also he's speaking about that. And he's speaking because he is in the middle of a leadership contest for concept. And if you want to be the leader of the Conservative Party, you need to be conservative, like O'Toole did. O'Toole said, I'm a true blue, and now Poiliev is saying the same thing during the leadership campaign. And I believe after that, that's why when I left in 2018, I said the Party of Canada is intellectually and morally corrupt because they're own. And during the electoral campaign, they're going to the left. And I believe that maybe not just after his leadership, like O'Toole did, because I believe that O'Toole, but it will take a couple of months and it will go to the left because they're 88 and in all Alberta. So they will need to please Ontario and Quebec to be able to be in government. And I believe that Poiliev will want to be prime minister, like he did everything to that, like he's doing right now, everything part of Canada, by speaking like a conservative. So any trust in Pierre Poiliev, it's only slogan and buzzword, and he I must admit, nice speech when he's delivering his speech, 22 minutes, tested with polling and focus group, and that's why he questioned from the crowd, and he won't answer any question from journalists because he message to be printed. He wants his message to be in your mind when you go, and that's why he's very successful, and I believe he will win. But the and Poiliev are not there to fight for conservative values, and I believe that we at the PPC, we have a bright future.
Okay. A lot of QAnon messaging is coming out of Pierre Poiliev's mouth right now. A lot of like stoking fear for the World Economic Forum, stoking fear by using sort of keywords that certain people gravitate to and they get really angry about, like elites and globalists and all that kind of stuff. Where is the delineation line between just talking shit and actually saying things that are relevant to voters here in Canada? Because when I listen to him talk, and sometimes I get this vibe with you too, although I find your delivery a lot more appealing than Pierre Poiliev's, but sometimes it feels like there's certain keywords, and if you say these keywords enough, people will be will gravitate towards you. Things like globalists and elites and the gold standard and central banking is evil and all that kind of stuff. How realistic are these sound bites when trying to govern around the idea of what they are is concerned?
Yes, it's a very nice sound bite, and Poiliev is very good at it. Good 5-second clip on TV. He's an expert doing that. That's why he's using these words. But that being said, also, he won't deliver because he's speaking against the elites in the U.S. Economic Forum. But actually, his platform is following the elites on climate change. He speaks against a carbon tax. Yes, but the problem is not the carbon tax. The problem is the Paris Accord. That's why we have a carbon tax. And if he's not imposing a carbon tax, more regulations on businesses, and that will be a cost for Canadian consumers. Yeah, he can speak against the elite, but he's adopting the same policies. So that's why there's a nice example there. But on the immigration, the UN with the UN Compact on Migration, he doesn't speak about that. He does not speak about immigration, but that's coming from the elites over there, the non-elected bureaucratic migration. For them, every citizen must be able to another country, and everybody must be able to move to another country and becoming a citizen. There's no borders anymore for the UN, and that's why they're promoting migration.
Yeah. But is this an agenda? Is this an Agenda 21 thing, Agenda 2030? Because those are another things that like people, those are the keywords again. It gets people so angry. And then when you ask them to unpack it, the best that they can do is like, well, it's supposed to be non-binding, but we've had wind turbines in Canada, so it's proof that they're infringing on our sovereignty. Is that really accurate?
But it's accurate. All that coming from the UN, coming from the World Economic Forum, for example, right now, we have the Arrive Canada Act. Canada is part of that World Economic Forum, and I'm against that because you need to preserve your privacy, because it's important. Yes, the World Economic, the World Health Organization won't impose any measure, Canada is a sovereign country. They cannot enforce anything. They don't have any army. What's happening is that we have a government here, a socialist government, that are in agreement with these policies, and Trudeau policies himself in Canada by legislations. So yes, it's coming from these international organizations, but they don't impose anything on us. Despite that philosophy, that globalism and socialism coming from nations, and because it's only an ideology and they're very efficient.
Okay.
So we have elected politicians in Canada that are adopting legislation in policies. But I just want to add also that people also have a world government that will govern and dictate everything. But that can happen because look in Europe. In Europe, in 90s time, their first free trade agreement in 1951, and after that treaties, and the last one was in 1993, the Maastricht Treaty, a supranational government. They created the EU. So it took them 50 supranational government in Europe. And that's the goal of the UN, and that's the goal of the world. We must fight that philosophy.
But it always manifests in a different way. When before 9/11, it was that the group that kind of pushes that talking point, I guess I'll just call it for now. What they were talking about was the Amero. We have to beware of the Amero, and the Amero was supposed to be the North American currency between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And we were going to form a North American Union, and we were going to get this new currency called the Amero, and there was going to be a super highway from like Winnipeg to the Gulf of Mexico, and none of it happened. And then it just manifests itself in a different way the next generation. And now I don't even know what it is because no one's really specific about it. It has a lot to do with the UN and sovereignty and things like that. But aren't these tropes that just keep coming back? And they're really valuable to use because it frightens people into thinking that our sovereignty is going away. But sometimes circumstantial evidence, like the World Health Organization making recommendations that are followed by countries, that is used as like, oh, that's definite concrete evidence that our sovereignty is going. I mean, where is the evidence that our sovereignty is actually being eroded? And does it count as evidence if we just happen to take recommendations from the United Nations or from the World Health Organization?
That's what I said. We are a sovereign country, and they cannot we have of sovereignty here in Canada. The problem is that philosophy, like I said, is implementing policies in line with the globalist. So if we don't speak against that philosophy, we will have in maybe 50 years, like in Europe, a world government, and we don't want that. We want to preserve. Why for us at the PPC, at the People's Party, we want to fight for Canadian first, our sovereignty first, saying no to the UN, to the not only is dysfunctional, but concretely to the UN Compact on Migration, to the UN on the Paris Accord, and like that you will preserve. But these organizations are very efficient and are promoting their ideas. But you're absolutely right. Right now they cannot impose anything on us. We are a sovereign. and Jack Meat, who are imposing ban in Canada coming from these international organizations.
Okay. Let's move on to the elite. When you were in the Harper government, did you feel this as strongly about the international elites and the globalists as you do now, or is that something that you sort of grew into?
No, I didn't at that time, because it was, fighting, and our policies were coming from us and with our platform when I was with him. And so I didn't see that. But, 2015, when Trudeau decided to implement these bad international organizations, I can see that they're very efficient. And that's why, against these organizations and for our sovereignty. But when I was a minister, the upper government was fighting for us. I know that the upper signed the agenda at that time. 20 is signed that, and without consultation with the parliament, we must admit that. But he signed that and implementing some of these goals that are in that agenda, so we can see on us the impact of globalism on us. And I just want to say, I'm not against the free trade. It's so we must not impose our views on other countries. And Trudeau tried to do that when we agreement with the U.S. and he wanted to change the labor law in U.S. And a free trade agreement must be a free trade agreement, only that. But right now, the agreements that Trudeau signed, there's more than only free trade there.
Yeah,
so
I think Stephen Harper did that too when certain, I think it was African countries, that he would only make free trade deals with them if they had certain abortion laws, like if they were pro-life countries or something like that. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think we had something like that. Yes, and we were not financing also in other countries at that time. Yeah.
Right. What was it like? You were in Davos in 2008. Now, in hindsight, what was it like mingling with all those evil elitists and globalists? Did you have to shower many times when you were there just to get the stench off? Or
I wish, James, I can answer your question, but I cannot, because yes, in 2008 I was in Davos. Yes, you're right. In 2008 I was foreign affairs. 2008 also we were in war in Afghanistan, and so my in Davos, because I received a mandate from Stephen Harper, because didn't have the right equipment to fight in Kandahar in Afghanistan. Was to have meetings with my counterparts, other foreign affairs ministers, them to help us in Afghanistan. And so I look at my agenda. One of them will be in Davos, and that's why I decided to go in Davos. I believe that I have around 32 meetings with other foreign affairs ministers. I didn't have time to assist to that conference. I didn't have time to mingle with doing one meeting with other foreign affairs ministers, and I was asking them for troops or give us equipment and planes and things like that, and my country to fight for our Canadian forces. And I was successful. So that trip, help from France, from UK, from other European countries. To answer your question, because I didn't assist at that World Economic Forum over there. I was too busy to do my own meetings.
Well, that's great for your messaging. Right now, it's pretty good. No, I get it. No, I'm just playing with you. I'm just playing. I'll take a little shot at you here, because now Donald Trump has something in common with you, right? Because he was caught with classified documents but it was a different situation. I know it was now. That's just a joke. As some of you might remember, Mr. Bernier, when he was minister, accidentally left a briefcase at somebody's house, and there was a big scandal about it. It seemed like an honest mistake. I thought it was blown out of proportion, but that's just me. But does the message that you have to your followers get a little tricky if it turns out Donald Trump was selling secrets to foreign adversaries? You know, like, would it be hard to throw Trump under the bus even if he deserved it?
But, I'm not detailed the American politics first. And I've read all that like a lot of Canadians. And I know that Trump wants, and I believe that we'll see the reality and the truth about all that. And so for me, a secret document must be a secret document. And he was a foreign affairs minister. I was coming from a meeting that I had in Europe, and I left these documents at my girlfriend's house. That was a mistake. These documents, it's very important to say, were not confidential anymore. It's confidential before my press conference that I did in Europe, but after that, everything that I had in my documents was made public during my. So
what were the documents covering again? Since they're public, I didn't remember that they went public. What was the information on the documents?
Oh, that was a brief conference, press conference that I did. All the details for Canada with NATO. So that was part of that. But after that, I did a press conference, and all that information was public by myself. Mm-hmm. So for Trump, I don't know if all that information is public. I doubt. That's another question. And we'll see what will happen.
Sometimes it feels like on the right side of the political spectrum, there is an automatic forgiveness lever when it comes to their leaders. Like you could, honestly, Max, I think you could probably go out there, just start jerseying people and punching people out, and your fans would just be like, yeah, he's fighting for liberty, because they don't seem to hold right-wing politicians accountable as much as the lefties. The lefties like to do the circle firing squad thing and just kill each other all the time. But the right seems a little more forgiving when it comes to their leaders getting into trouble or doing things that they shouldn't do. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's the way it looks like from here.
Well, I think I don't agree with that. You have to be, and I believe that the population don't like a politician that is not a politician that is also lying to people. I did a mistake, and I believe that's why I was reelected with the biggest majority outside the 2008 election. So
I thought your situation was blown out of proportion. I wasn't trying to say that your specific situation needed all that much forgiving. It just sounded like an honest mistake. I want to move on from that, though, because I asked one of your staffers in an email today a question, and I didn't get a response to it. And so I don't know the answer to this question. It's not usually a great way to ask a question, but when you were part of the Harper government, this is a picture of Stephen Harper being sworn in 2006. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. You were part of the government then too, right?
Yes, I was industry at that time.
Okay. What a lot of people didn't know at the time is that the Bible that he's using to swear his oath on, his prime ministerial oath, like whatever you would call it, his oath of office, is a Bible that was a gift to him from the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. The Plymouth Brethren Christian Church is a group that I have been covering extensively on this show for the last 2 months. They have deep ties with the conservative parties. This is 2011. This is during Harper's victory speech. And in the front row, you'll see 5 gentlemen: Chuck Truon, Roy Taylor, Brad Mitchell, Ron Barnes, and Ralph Mooney. They are all members of this organization. This organization, which has now, which by the way, has a present day leader who the people in the cult believe is a deity who can speak directly with Jesus. It is a cult. There are several allegations of sexual misconduct and coercion and mental abuse and emotional abuse surrounding this cult. This cult also owns businesses that during the pandemic, especially from Jason Kenney's government, Doug Ford's government, received millions and millions of dollars in lucrative PPE contracts. And I'm asking you this because I would like to know if you had ever heard of this group, if you had ever known that Gerald Shapur, who was the former general counsel of the Conservative Party of Canada, former attorney for Stephen Harper, is this cult's lawyer, and also someone who has lobbied for some of these groups that have gotten these big fat contracts. A, have you heard of this group? And B, do you think it's proper, even if you haven't heard of this group, that Gerald Shapur can be this conduit between government contracts and this group that he represents that seems to receive an inordinate amount of these government contracts?
Yeah, I must admit, James, that it is the first time that I'm hearing all that. I didn't know that group before, and it's the first time. About him, yes, you're right by saying he was the attorney for the Conservative Party of Canada. He helped me when I was running for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. He was part of my team with other people across the country. I didn't know that with them and maybe with the government, but I don't have any information.
Okay, fair enough. Now, the next election, it's kind of up in the air. I guess it's up to Jagmeet Singh when the next election is. Do you anticipate something happening this year before the end of the year, or are we out of the woods with another election, you think?
Well, I believe we will have an election when Jagmeet will be ready for an election. Right, huge debt, so they need to raise money, and they're not ready. And also, if you have an election today, Jagmeet will have fewer NDP members. His goal is to increase the number of NDP members of parliament. That Jagmeet will stay with Justin Trudeau, and same thing with the Conservative. Maybe they're saying that, but that's not true. I believe that they don't want an election. I believe for their new leader, if it's Pierre Poiliev, to be more well known and, as you know, efficient in the House. They want him to perform in the House, be there. I don't think that the Conservative will push for an election also this fall. So election, yes, for me will be fall 2023 to 2025. We don't know. But for me, as the leader of the people, that's why I'm traveling across the country, building organization. We have up to now 1 candidates approved and selected, ready to run if there's an election. And that's what we, and that's why I'm traveling across the country. We are not in election right now. I'm not, but I need to be on the ground to meet our people, to promote the party, our vision for this country, and that's what I'm doing.
As a person who's been, accosted yourself, I think you were egged once, if I'm not mistaken. What did you think about what happened with Christina Freeland in Alberta? And I want to preface this a little bit because I've seen other politicians get verbally harassed online in real life. There was something a little bit different, and I'm not a fan of the Trudeau government, so it has nothing to do with politics or anything, but there seems to be something a little bit different when a giant man is yelling obscenities and walking towards a group of women who are then really trapped in an elevator. Like, that could have gone sideways really quickly. What did you think of when you saw that, and what do you think it means regarding our civil discourse in this country?
But yes, that was not appropriate first, but that was and that was the incident. For me, I was during the last election, and also on our partisan election, by Antifa. They were violenting, were aggressing our partisan, and the mainstream media didn't speak about that. Something is happening to the conservative or to the right. They don't make a big show with that. They don't speak about that. What I think we just saw the double standard. When it's a liberal, a leftist, it's all over the media. But when it's somebody, so you can see that the media are not objective. They're not neutral. They're leftist, and they were very happy to cover that. But they didn't cover anything when I was at the last general election. So okay. Yes, I don't like. Remember, who was able to win the last election? Trudeau, because he divided Canadians. The good one was the vaccinated one, unvaccinated one. I was the only politician that said we must unite the freedom umbrella. And the way to do politics, division, that must be something that you can have. People are not happy when they're. So I believe that man that did that proved that. But I can understand his best about the situation. I believe about our rights, but that's minister. I agree with you.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It just seems so over the top. Like, we all have a way that we can understand. I can understand why someone might be frustrated with you or with Christina Freeland or with Trudeau or with Jagmeet Singh. It's all subjective. It really does. But that, I have a hard time because Pierre Poiliev kind of answered the question the same way you did, which is, yes, it was awful. However, and then fall into the whole thing about how the media doesn't cover it. Wouldn't you say that the way the media covered Christina Freeland's situation, wouldn't it be more accurate and more principled to say that you would prefer it if the media covered conservative politicians who get accosted in the exact same way? So therefore, wouldn't you want the media to just maintain that sort of reaction instead of saying, well, they never do it for conservatives, so kind of, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like you're pivoting away from the fact that a female minister surrounded by other ladies with no security was literally cornered into an elevator by a man in a wife beater calling her a fucking bitch and the C word and all that. Like, that was even the egging that you got. I thought, okay, a man got egged, not the end of the world. That no one should have done that. That was stupid. But that was like a 3 on a scale of 1 to Christina Freeland getting chased into an elevator. Don't you think?
That's your perception on all that. The question that you asked me is about the media, and the media is right to say that it's a double standard. They didn't cover me, and they're saying, oh yeah, me was egged. It's okay, but it's not okay.
I didn't think it was okay that you got egged. I thought it was a waste of food. I thought it was disrespectful to you. I think that listen, Max, you know me. I don't agree with your politics on a lot of issues. I think that you yourself as a person seem fine. I do find it a little bit of a juxtaposition that a person who I like yourself, tends to attract people who are also quite divisive. If I see a fuck Trudeau flag, I immediately dismiss that person as not worth listening to. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's divisive. Their whole existence is a divisiveness that they are trying to sell as people who have already been divided by Trudeau. And I think they're pretty happy to be in their camp without any quote unquote libtards because they speak for conservatives, and that's fine if that's the way you want to do it. But there is a strange relationship that you have with your followers, because I feel, this to be straight up with you, I feel like you're kind of a better person than your followers are.
I'm very proud of our supporters. They're ordinary Canadians, workers, that try to, life, and they don't like the big fat government in Ottawa like me. So it's for me, growing that party from 0% in 2018, 1.65% at the last election, this party will grow. And it's not only former conservatives that are supporting us. People are coming from the NDP, real fiscal responsibilities, and they're coming because our policies for me, and I believe that we are a populist party, yes, with common sense policies. So, but you can have different, and I believe that the Liberals also, they may have supporters that are not polite outside. It's everywhere. That's a society. You have beauty of our society. You have people that think differently and have different point of view. We need discussion. That's a big lack in our society right now, and that's why it's polarized. The debate in the media, I'm being canceled in mainstream media. It's very, but there's a bad apples also on the left, not right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I am sort of with you on that. I mean, I think there's bad actors on the left. It's just that the ones on the right are just so loud right now, and they're so angry right now, and they're more angry than they are on the left right now. The left was angry when the Black Lives Matter protests were happening in 2020. That would be, for me, an example of when the left was really angry. Trump was in his last year. There was like 4 years of just ridiculousness in the States. I'm sorry. I know that you have the same fan base as Trump in a lot of ways, but he was a rodeo clown. I think everyone is going to judge him through the lens of history as being a rodeo clown. And it's unfortunate because there are certain things about libertarianism that I can embrace. They're the anti-war position that they have. The fact that they don't want to, the fact that decriminalizing drugs is a better idea than waging a war on drugs, things like that. I know you have to go soon. I wanted to ask you one last question though about some social issue. Oh, go ahead.
I want to answer that about Trump, okay. And the leftists. You're right. After look what the radical leftists did. They put in fire cities on the right, at the right. They just did a peaceful protest in Ottawa. Our rights were violated, and we did a peaceful protest. One policeman, killed. It was. But what they did, they put in fire cities. So very radical.
No, I know, I get it. Like the Portland situation, right? The Portland situation was bad. Antifa took over basically the city. And the right's version of Portland, I guess. There's Charlottesville. That was a weird incident. But the January 6th thing, I think we're lucky that they're not too bright because they did storm the Capitol. They did bust into the House, and they did. It did result in dead people. They did bring weapons to the Capitol building for whatever reason, So we're going to agree with the whole fringe on the right, fringe on the left thing. I just think right now in Canada, the right seems a lot more angry. There's Jeremy McKenzie, and there's the death threats against journalists, and there's all these things happening. And the best we can get out of the people who are trying to get to take responsibility for their actions is, we were just joking. And, I look at what's happening in the States right now, and I hope that Trump is charged, destroyed, but then pardoned. Because I feel like if he is convicted of something, that there's going to be a civil war down there. And I don't know, that to me, that doesn't speak to the violence on the left. That speaks to the violence on the right. And they're armed more than the left is too. So, there's some concerns that people have there.
Yeah, we are living in a very with inflation and people, they're losing their job. There's recession in the US and what happened in Canada, and you have people that are actually in situation. And for me, I'm telling them we need to do a peaceful ideological revolution. That's our revolution, a common, and that's why the People's Party is there, and we will do that revolution. Candidates that will be elected, I believe, at the next election, and will in Parliament. So there's a way to have a better, but it may be worse before being better. When I'm saying worse, the economy, because of the conservative and the liberals, they all voted for big deficit that is coming. And by the way, Poiliev is speaking against inflation, but he created Trudeau for all these COVID-19 programs, and these programs by the credit card of the Bank of Canada or the ATM machine of the Bank of Canada. And now Poiliev and the Conservatives have a responsibility for the inflation that we have right now.
I'd like to remind people. I was going to ask you one question, then I'll remind people. Well, your last question is this. Recently, I saw you speak out against assisted suicide in Canada because you say healthcare providers, or it was reported, I think, that healthcare providers or nurses actually, I think, were pushing that option onto patients. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I just started reading about that today, and I haven't really dug into that a little bit.
Yeah. We passed that legislation in Canada, euthanasia in this country, but at that time, the opponents were telling us that and free for all, and everybody would be able to have that. And now we have the proof of that today. When I was in Saskatchewan, a lady told me, Maxime, if you dial 811, you know that the 811 is the country for medical help. It's not an emergency like 911, a doctor or to a nurse. That's the number that you call. So, and I did call Saskatchewan, and that's why I tweeted about that. When you call that number, options, first one, then the second, third, and you just have to press one. They're telling you if you want to have assistance, what's the word? Assistance dying, medical assistance. Euthanasia, press on 5. So they are promoting that. We are promoting instead of promoting life, and that's why I tweeted out. I was shocked with that.
Isn't that one of the greatest examples of libertarianism you've ever heard? That we can just off ourselves if we want to? No.
Yeah, but that's a crime, and for me, that's a crime. Veteran that who was in a hospital, and we can help you also. We must not promote that, and that's what is happening. It's going too far, and these kind of behavior criminal, and I believe that we must reopen that legislation and put on the way that you may be able to have euthanasia.
Does the small party just want to slide the 811 number to Pierre Poiliev, just to see what happens? Just press 5, Pierre. No.
No, I want to have a debate. I believe that we have better policies for this country. This country with a smaller government in Ottawa that will respect provincial jurisdiction, provincial respect our Charter of Rights, and I'm ready to debate. And by the way, I will, because you need to be on the national stage debating at the last election. Now for Bernier, he must have 4% of the vote, and now we had 5%. We'll debate with him.
They're not going to let you debate.
Sorry?
They're not going to let you debate.
But
it's just when Patrick Brown ran for the leadership of the Conservatives, and I was like, they're not going to let him win. They're not going to let you debate. There's not a chance in hell because you don't have a seat. They're not going to do it.
Well, we have 5%, and I think 4%. So I believe that I will.
You better start the legal proceedings now then, Max. You better start the legal proceedings now to fight for that spot, because if you already have your case, which is that you received more than 4% in the last election, you need a lawyer to start working on that now, because I guarantee you, as soon as that consortium starts getting together and starts talking, they're not going to let you debate.
And they're changing the rules all the time, but I will fight because they said 4%. And yes, if it's not happening, that will be a big fight on our side.
Okay. He does politics differently, and I like to remind people whenever I have him on the show that he did once say on this show that if you're a white supremacist or a racist, find another goddamn party. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's great.
I think you're down to 3% now, Max. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
I'm going up at 7%.
Yeah. All right, Maxime Bernier, thank you very much for joining me. It was a pleasure to have you on again, sir.
Thank you, James. Have a nice day.
I'll see you again soon. That was Maxime Bernier. I know he gets a lot of people hot, and I know a lot of people don't like him that listen to this show, but he's all right. He has a tough job navigating through, all the different types of people that vote for PC party initiatives. The jokes, the low-hanging fruit, the jokes that are the low-hanging fruit, racist and conspiracy theorists, that's all fine and dandy. I happen to know people who were Green Party people who voted PPC the last election, so it's not as clear-cut as you think. I do like having him on the show. I find him to be slightly evasive with the way he answers questions, but pleasant enough for me to do the interview, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Tomorrow, in lieu of Gerald Chipur, former lawyer for Prime Minister Harper and the former general counsel for the Conservative Party of Canada, he is currently in South Korea with Jason Kenney, a buddy of his, lame duck premier Jason Kenney, doing a trade mission for South Korea. I thought it was a good time to remind people exactly what he did before that, which was work for the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, aka the Plymouth Brethren Crazy Cult, to hunt down someone who is now a good friend of mine, Richard Marsh, because Richard Marsh was a whistleblower. Not only did he do that, but it was under the false pretense when he hired political fixer David Wallace to do the dirty work. It was under the false pretense that there was a criminal warrant out for Richard Marsh's arrest, which was untrue. And then, allegedly, at least according to David Wallace, he also made David sign a fake affidavit in order for David to first of all get paid. I'll let David explain the rest of that because I'm not sure if I have it right. Either way, tomorrow we will have David Wallace and Richard Marsh on to talk about Gerald Chipur. And then on Friday, I have Eric Alper on. Eric is a really well-known public relations person in the music industry. So that should be fun. You should give him a follow on Twitter as well. He is hilarious. ERICALPER. And let's see. Do I have anyone next week? I do. I have next week. I have Karima Saad on Thursday. And then on Tuesday, I have a Canadian hip-hop living legend. His name is Classified. He just came out with an acoustic album called Retrospected. You should go check that out. There's a good single called Growing Pains, which is a track about his kid. So it's going to be a busy time over the next week here on Blackballed, and I'm glad you guys were able to join me tonight. Leave some comments, like, share, do whatever you need to do to get the word out. I hope you guys enjoyed my interview with Maxime Bernier, and we will see you next time on Blackballed. Thank you, everybody.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.